Welcome into an all-new edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Happy Friday, hockey fans. The show is a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it is never ordinary at Bet365. Frank Seravalli, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing? They let us get to Friday again. Let's go. And great chase tonight. Alex Ovechkin, potential record-breaking night. Let's go.
Giddy up. We'll have more on that a little bit later on. I got the odds for you from Bet365. We're going to be joined by Ty Anderson from out in Boston. He covers the Bruins for 98.5 The Sports Hub. He's going to talk about their free fall in the standings. But first, let's talk about the team that took down the Boston Bruins last night and handed them yet another loss. 7 L's in a row. And the one last night, like I said, comes at the hands of the Montreal Canadiens, who stay hot. A third win in a row for the Habs, who continue to hold on to that final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. Now 2 points clear of the New York Rangers, although they don't hold the tiebreaker. Again, that's going to be really interesting. But Frank, just wanted to talk a little bit about this Habs team. They got goals from 4 different goal scorers again last night, including 2 points from Nick Suzuki, who I had to double check this one because reading the stat was crazy. He's the Canadiens' first 80-point player since Alex Kovalev over 15 years ago. I think it's 17 years ago. That is crazy.
Totally agree, and I think it speaks to the season as a whole that Suzuki and the Montreal Canadiens have. You watched last night's game, there was only one team on the ice surface last night. That score was way further apart than the scoreboard would indicate. The Habs dominated almost every facet of that game. And look, we've broken down some Suzuki clips with John Goyens on the coach's room. We've looked at his year as a whole. It didn't start great. The first 10 to 15 games of the season, there might have been some points for Nick Suzuki, but he was not playing anywhere near the level that he's capable of. And he's since then been one of the very best players in the NHL. You look at his point total since the Four Nations face-off, since not making that team, since not really even being in the conversation to make that team. I'd be hard-pressed to find that many better players on the Team Canada roster to leave him off for the 2026 Olympics. The poise, the compete, the sublime play, he's had it all this season in Montreal for Nick Suzuki.
That top line, Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Juraj Slafkovsky have combined for 12 goals in the team's last 10 games. But that's not the last 10 games I want to talk about when it comes to that forward group. They have a third line right now, Christian Dvorak, Josh Anderson, and Brendan Gallagher, who are absolutely on fire. They've combined for 13 goals in the team's last 10 games. The fact that you were getting more than 1 goal per game from your third line, and it's at least the 2 wingers. I look at Anderson and Gallagher and go, man, whoever gets them in the first round, likely going to be Washington. Again, I know the Caps will be big favorites, but that's the kind of third line that can change a playoff series, in my opinion.
It's the kind of third line that gives you nightmares. Big, feisty, maybe not Gallagher, but certainly feisty, and a line that's going to punch you in the face. And so the rest of it, the way I really like what the Montreal Canadiens have built is if you look at all 4 of these lines that are on the screen right now, there is one incredibly high hockey IQ player on each line. Suzuki, Heineman. You look at the third line with Dvorak, Jake Evans. This is a group that really can compete in so many different areas that gives them a leg up. And you know me, I've been saying this since the beginning of the season, since way back in September. This Montreal Canadiens team has a playoff-ready, playoff-capable offensive caliber. It was their defense core that I had significant questions about, and frankly still do. This iteration is not what it's going to look like in 2 to 3 years from now, but Lane Hudson has done such an amazing job this year that he's really helped take that whole group to the next level.
Yeah, and that was going to be my point with the blue line is I have no concerns about them going forward, that they don't have the makings of a very, very good group that can have playoff success. as far as this year goes, there's not that much size, and it's a lot of smaller guys too. So I do wonder about that. But one thing that can mask up, call it weak blue line for now, is goaltending. And last week we talked a lot about Sam Montembeault and were they overplaying him? Well, he seems to have snapped out of his funk. His save percentages over this 3-game winning streak, 947, 926, 923. They're getting good goaltending again.
Yeah, and I look back to also the last few games as well. They've beaten a good team. Yep. I mean, I'm not going to include the Bruins in that category right now, but you sweep the Florida Panthers in a home and home, a team that, you win, they win, you could potentially see in the playoffs, and a spot where, look, they've shown some significant improvement, and just like the Blues, in a different fashion, it's not win 11 in a row, but they've got a mojo to them that I think is pretty important heading into the playoffs.
I got a chance earlier this year at the Four Nations to attend my first ever game at the Bell Center, and that's kind of what helped me not get on the Habs bandwagon, but if I had to root for anyone in that wild card race, I'm going, man, last night they were doing the Olays. I'm like, I want to see a playoff game in that building now.
Yeah, best place on earth to watch a hockey game, bar none.
One thing that helps the Habs as they go down their final stretch of 7 games, they have the 30th easiest schedule in the NHL, according to Tankathon, or sorry, third easiest schedule. I think I messed that up. Anyways, they have a really easy schedule down the stretch, and they control their own destiny. Certainly something we'll be talking about more next week. One team that did punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup playoffs last night was the Colorado Avalanche. It is the 7th straight playoff appearance for the Avs, and hey, a little bit of history yesterday as well, Frank, as Cale Makar gets to 30 goals on the season, the first defenseman to do it since Mike Green all the way back in 2009. Is that the nail in the coffin of Cale Makar's Norris Trophy case?
I think probably that's certainly going to help the case. I mean, the fact that the Columbus Blue Jackets really kind of tailed off, I don't think that helps Zach Werenski's case either. And obviously the injuries this year to Quinn Hughes had set him back pretty significantly. 30 goals as a defenseman is an incredible achievement. You mentioned Mike Green, and I think back to the year that he had 31. Did he win the Norris that year? I think he fell short. I think he finished second, if I'm not mistaken. But it just goes to show you goals aren't necessarily everything. You've got to be a complete player, and Cale Makar certainly has that with the way they get the puck up and out of their end. And the other interesting facet to look at with Makar from a stats perspective now, he's got 5 games left. He's at 90 points. Can he get to 100?
Yeah, and you look at the pace he's on, 8 points in his last 5 games. He is red hot right now, and he's the kind of guy who can keep a run like that going for another 5 or 6 games. For the Avs, let's do strengths and weaknesses as they get ready for, like I said, a 7th straight playoff appearance here. If I could start with the weaknesses, as weird as this might sound after we just heaped praise on Cale Makar, is there weakness there, blue line? Like, I look at that collection there and I raise an eyebrow going, man, if you're on the road and you don't have last change, there's a couple pairings there who might get exposed.
But yeah, it's 100% their defense core. I was surprised that, look, Ryan Lindgren will help, and he's certainly a playoff style defenseman, but they've got 1 all-world pair and 4, I would say, highly questionable defensemen after that they're going to have to try and shelter some of these guys. I think Malinsky has taken some strides. Keaton Middleton is a guy who's been in and out of the lineup. Eric Johnson, they grabbed from the Flyers at the trade deadline as sort of a last gasp and bring him in. He made the joke he'd sweep the floors or whatever it was, if that's what it took to be part of this Colorado Avalanche team. And so, look, that's clearly the issue with the Avs. If they have trouble, is going to be they don't have depth on defense.
Yeah, and I guess maybe one thing that would be different than a year ago is you don't have a big question mark between the pipes, right? Like, I mean, Mackenzie Blackwood seems to be a solution there, and maybe that can mask things a little bit. Their biggest strength, though, it's without a doubt that forward group, obviously, at the deadline, getting Brock Nelson, getting Charlie Coyle. You look at how Martin Necas has fit in, and then there's that wild card, Frank. Is Gabe Landeskog going to try play?
I would very much think that he is. It's a matter of when and not if. I mean, he's gearing up. He's taken some contact, playing special teams, looks to be making all the cuts and edge work that you'd want to see from a guy who's pushing that knee. And I think the biggest key is consecutive days on the ice, which we've seen him ramp up as well. 3, 4, 5 days in a row on the ice. That's what you need to get through a playoff grind.
It's been over 940 days, over 950 days since we've seen Gabe Landeskog play in an NHL game. That, of course, was the night the Colorado Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. Could we see him back in a few weeks? That's one of the more intriguing storylines heading into the postseason. Frank, on the flip side of clinching is elimination, and that's what the Anaheim Ducks faced last night. They are officially out of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it's just, I mean, again, dead opposite of the Avs. It's the 7th straight year with no playoffs in Southern California for the Ducks. Do you view them, and let me just give you their point totals the last couple of years, because this season was, again, a bit of a step forward, you can call it, with 74 points. They had 59 last year, 58 the year before that. But then 3 years ago, they were a team that was in the 70s again. So is this a Ducks team that you think can sustain and grow on this season, or are they still kind of stuck in the mud to you?
No, I think this was a step in the right direction for sure. I mean, you look at some of the pieces of this team that have taken gigantic steps forward. Jackson Lacombe had a massive year. He's a piece that, has really grown into something incredibly important for the Anaheim Ducks. You see continued progress and improvement from Leo Carlsson, who I think is so highly intelligent and smart and is going to be able to harness and build in that frame that he has, an NHL ready frame that's just gotten stronger and stronger. And then you see some, I guess you'd call them flashes of brilliance again from Trevor Zegras that I think was really important. So it hasn't all clicked at the same time, but then you also look in net and you see Lucas Dostal in the year that he had. And look, I think there's lots of building blocks for this Ducks team. They need a lot more consistency. And I think one of the interesting questions to ask again will be, is Greg Cronin coming back for year 3? Is he the right choice to lead this group? He seems exasperated at times. And I wonder what Pat Verbeek is feeling in terms of thinking how to get this team to that next level, because they need more. And certainly as they continue to draft and develop and get those players graduating to the NHL, they're going to get more, but they also need to try and find a couple more difference makers if they can.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to kind of go next, was first the Greg Cronin thing. You kind of answered that, but they seem to have sort of the pillars here now. And Lucas Dostal, he's going to be a starting goalie in this league. I loved watching Jackson Lacombe the few times I got eyes on him this year, and they have other good pieces in the mix there as well with Minchikov and Zellweger. And then you go up front, and it's I don't want to say embarrassment of riches, but man, there's a good young core developing there. If you had to add sort of that one big piece, because they're going to have $40+ million in cap space this summer, are you looking to add a veteran forward to this group who can help these guys, or are you going on the blue line?
Oh, I don't think they need any more help on the blue line. I think they're well situated moving forward. And I'm glad you mentioned Olin Zellweger as well, because he's another important piece. This team needs help on the wing. And they did re-sign Frank Vadrano, of course, to that long-term deal. Alex Killorn is getting older. What's the status of Trevor Zegras moving forward? How do you find more goals? Can Cutter Gauthier grow into the player that you think he can be? All questions that the Ducks need to answer.
Yeah, should be an interesting offseason. Again, and this is what makes sort of this summer interesting, is there's a handful of teams who are kind of in the same spot as the Ducks. Again, with the cap going up, I view Chicago and Anaheim. I think San Jose could get aggressive. Like, there's a lot of teams who just feel like they're itching to go jump up a little bit and really prove that they're serious about taking that step forward. And I'm curious about what that's going to do in the free agent market and how it could drive up prices, which brings me to our fourth and final topic here before we get to our big segment, Frank. And that is just a little bit of a close on what we talked about yesterday in the big segment, the top 50 free agents board that you have and sort of the check down options. Last year, you were really high on Matt Roy, who maybe wasn't quite like a check down option, but you were saying like he's one of the more underappreciated players in this class. Have you put your name behind a guy this year?
Well, I could stick with a Washington connection, and he's been such a highly valued player, mostly because of his pay scale. But I look at someone a way further down the lineup player, a bottom 6 guy in Nick Dowd, who just continues to produce and thrive in that type of environment. You see him 21 on our board. Let's see what Trent Frederick gets up to in the playoffs for the Edmonton Oilers. He's expected to make his season debut on Monday as they close out this California swing, or I guess I should say Oilers debut. Look, Pius Suter is going to be a fascinating a free agent option as well, hits 20 goals for the first time in his career, a monster season, has been asked to play way above his weight class for the Vancouver Canucks with the injuries that they've had. And he's done it. Pardon the pun. He's been a Swiss Army knife for the Vancouver Canucks, but with him and Ryan Donato, another guy who's a bit further up on the board in the teens, he's a guy that, again, career year, Donato might be doubling his career high in both goals and points. Him and Suter are the ultimate test cases. Do teams believe that they can go out and do it again repeatedly, or do teams view this as one-off situations for guys who have hundreds of games played in the NHL already?
I love that you answered this question the way you did, because it ties in perfectly to my follow-up. Like, you can look at the forwards on the market, and like there's a clear high end with Marner, and then there's some interesting veterans to check down to, and then there's guys like you said who are coming off career seasons. It's not the same when you look at the group of defensemen though. Like, I view this as having like a pretty stark drop off. You go from Gavrikov to Lindgren. Like, I think there's a very, very big gap there. Do you think that could drive up the prices for some of those top six? Like, that's where I look, and it might be an Aaron Ekblad or whoever. I think there's a mistake that'll be made when one of those top six guys gets signed, because someone will be sitting there going, I don't want to be checking down to Ryan Lindgren to solve my blue line.
Yeah, which means you're probably going to have to go on the trade route. I mean, look at the right shot. You mentioned the left shot guys. What about the right side? You've got Neil Pionk and Aaron Ekblad. Brent Burns is 40 years old. And then you get down to the next closest guy on the list is Cody Ceci. So then you start to ask yourself about the marketplace, and you say, well, does that mean that Rasmus Anderson in Calgary would generate more value on the trade market one more year at 4.55? Because the Flames are going to have to ask themselves that question starting on July 1. Are we extending him or are we trading him? You could obviously keep him in the next season and move him at the deadline and probably get the same value, but it's this defense market. It's high end. Like, I think Pionk is incredibly underrated with what he's done in Winnipeg, but then it drops off, to your point, in a pretty big hurry.
Yeah, and will a team sit there and go, okay, do we go the trade market? Or, if Neil Pionk's asking for, I'll just like spitball numbers. If he's asking for 6.5, you know what? Let's just go up to 7.5, not spend the assets and get the guy in free agency. Like, again, I think there could be some overpays there. It will be interesting to keep an eye on that. But for now, let's get to our big segment for the day. It's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian owned and operated since 1972. You can check out a large selection of Canadian lab-grown diamonds and mined diamonds by visiting them online at charmdiamondcenters.com. Ty Anderson covers the Bruins for 98.5 The Sports Hub. Always appreciate you popping on, Ty. And I guess I'll start with sort of just this free fall we've seen in the last month. On March 1st, they were 2 points out of a playoff spot, and now they're sitting there bottom 5 in the NHL. I hope this makes sense, but is this the perfect tank for it to happen this quickly?
I think you're muted there, Ty.
Oh, sorry. I think you're muted, Ty.
We still can't hear you.
Okay, maybe we'll try to reconnect with Ty, but as we work on his audio there, and Pat will message me when he's good to go. But Frank, do you kind of get what I'm saying? Like, they had a year with playoff expectations, and then in a month.
I made this point earlier in the week. Like, this is the best stealth tank that there is, because this is a team that has gone 2-9, I think, since the trade deadline. 2-9-1. They've got 3 wins total since Four Nations Faceoff, which was like 2 to 3 weeks before that. And they've done it in the most, I would call it, and I'm going to do air quotes, the most ethical way possible, because they haven't gone out there and said, hey, we're trying to purposely lose. They've gone out there and said, we removed 5 critical pieces from this team at the trade deadline. They're gone. We've gotten the assets. We're just putting out on the ice a roster that is not nearly as good or competitive. And we've got an interim coach and some guys that may just want to set up some tee times for mid-April already.
Yeah, and that's certainly a factor as well. As we wait for our boy Ty Anderson to pop in, Frank, let me just crush out a couple of our Ask DFOs here. Then we'll get back to the Bruins in just a second. We got a couple of questions about teams heading into the offseason, including, I mean, the fact that Rangers fans are already looking ahead to the summer is wild. But we got one over under that both Kreider and Mika Zibanejad are no longer Rangers next season. Do you have a read? Do you think both those guys are going to be back, or if the Rangers end up missing? Do you think there could be sort of some big changes there? Oh, never mind. Frank, don't even answer that. You're going to wait on that because I think we got Ty Anderson back.
Hey, what's going on?
There we go, Ty.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about
We
that.
gotcha. The perfect tank. Is that what you would call it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for sure, because you look at sort of where they were, I think they realized that their team was incredibly flawed. You know, even if they got in, you look at the way they've won games this year. It's been on the back of David Pastrnak going absolutely sicko mode and having 3 or 4 points in a game, or it's been their goaltender, you know, going above and beyond. Look at those games against Florida and Tampa Bay where Swayman had to stop 40 plus shots to win the game. That's not a sustainable model to win a playoff round, to go on a deep run. Sure, it can happen, but they didn't have the horses, and they realized that. And I think as long as you had Brad Marchand, you were going to be looking at your situation as, we got to win a Stanley Cup. We got to win now. We got to win now. Moving on from him allowed you to look in the mirror and say, we are not a good enough hockey team. We are not where we need to be. And so when you do that, and then you open the deadline with 2 straight wins, you're kind of going, uh-oh. But then they've lost 10 in a row now. You know, like they and it's not for a lack of trying. You know, like I was talking to a player the other day, and you know, in the middle of this losing streak, and it's like, it's not like we're not trying. It's just, this is the team we have. We have limitations. You look at their back end, you know, it's a lot of minutes for a guy like Parker Wotherspoon or Mason Lohrei, you know, take your pick here, whoever you want. It's a lot of minutes for those guys who might not be ready for that kind of prime time situation. And so watch where they've lost games here. They've had pockets where they've gotten some big time saves from from Jeremy Swayman or Jonas Corposalo. They've gotten goals from David Pastrnak and Morgan Geekie, but you look beyond that, they don't have enough horses to win a game against even average competition now, it feels like.
Okay, so Ty, I think the $95.5 million question that every Bruins fan wants to know for next season is, how aggressive do you think Don Sweeney and company will be trying to re-spool this up again and be a competitive playoff team? Or do you think that this is a multi-year process?
I believe they're going to spend to the cap next year. I think they're going to be very aggressive. Obviously, it may depend on how the ping pong balls fall, and if they get the first overall pick, you don't want to eat it all up right away, because you have to have a second contract for that player. But they are not a team that looks at themselves and says, we want to retool or a lengthy rebuild. I can tell you right now that ownership is not about that. They do not believe in retools or rebuilds, you know, in terms of stripping it down completely. And so I think they're going to be big time players. And I look at things like this, Frank, like the business model isn't hurting, but it will if you keep this kind of roster, right? Like they have a season ticket waiting list, but ticket prices in Boston have gone up 13% over the last 2 years. I believe it's the second highest get-in the United States behind MSG. So, like, fans want a reason to come to the games. What you have right now is not a reason to come to the games. And so I think their star power is really lacking. And for that reason, I expect them to make, or try to make, a move for a big-time player in free agency, because you know that's when ownership gets their ear up, you know, their eyebrows raised a little bit, when the business suffers. And it hasn't happened yet, but if they roll out this roster, you know, in the fall, it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna hurt them in a big way.
Mm-hmm. So connected to that, but maybe not really, will Joe Sacco be the Bruins' long-term coach?
I don't see it. I don't see it. There's, you know, the Bruins have acknowledged that he's been in a bad spot, that they put him in a bad spot this year. Not a great roster. His first coaching chance in a decade and a half, but there's just I think they need someone whose voice carries a bit more weight, and who can really challenge
Jim
players a
Montgomery
little
and
bit.
Bruce Cassidy. I mean, those are two
Yeah,
pretty heavy voices. That didn't work out, or it
no, but
did.
I think that you look at the natural. I mean, we've all been doing this for a long time now, right? You see the natural rotation of the axis here when it comes to coaching. You have the prickly guy, which they had with Bruce Cassidy. Then you go to the more player-friendly, strong communicator, Jim Montgomery. So now they're probably going to go back to that stern, kind of commanding voice. And I think for them, it's about who's available. I feel like they wouldn't hate a guy like Mike Sullivan or Peter Laviolette becoming available. We'll see what happens there, obviously, but I feel like they want a more veteran voice who they feel like can get through to their team in a more. This isn't a knock on Joe Sacco, but a more authoritative. Okay, this guy's opinion carries some weight here versus what they currently have.
Let me ask you one to wrap up, and it's a bit of a look ahead to the offseason again. It's fill in the blank. For the offseason to be a success, the Bruins must do blank.
Add a legitimate 30-goal scorer kind of player. Like a 30-goal, if you can get Mitch Marner, I'm all in. But like you got to get some more scoring because teams are able to key in on David Pastrnak. And if he's taken away, you have nobody who can score, who can put the puck in the net. And I think they need another winger here. The Elias Lindholm contract is looking pretty rough right now. Can you salvage it by putting, a high-end winger with him? Is that a way to salvage that? And I know it's a lot of money on one line, but that Lindholm, you're not paying him almost $8 million for 40 points a year. You got to find a way to try to juice him up a little bit, whether that's, situationally or just putting him with a better winger. And so I think they have to add another guy who has legit 30-goal potential. 30-goal results, 30-goal potential for this lineup to be success.
Well, I was going to just challenge you on that and say, isn't it more position specific than that? Don't they need a true bona fide center? Because Lindholm he's not a number one guy.
Yeah, so I think what's going to happen there is I think you're going to try to tackle that in the draft. I think they're going to grab one of these centers and they're going to hope that they can be a high-end, top six kind of guy because you look at what they have, and I don't disagree at all, but their problems, like they need everything. They need everything besides D right now, it feels like. But really, I think there's no way out of the Lindholm contract, right? There's no way out, you could trade Middlestat if you want, but it looks like he's going to be here. You have Matty Poitras, you have Pavel Zacha. So you have a tight little window here you're going to run it back with these centers, maybe. But I think adding a winger will help your center situation by putting them together. And I think that's kind of where they are because look at their pipeline, Frank. Beyond just, Pastrnak, who's the next winger coming in? It looks like Fabian Lysell is the best thing they have. And well, he's still looking for NHL point number 1. So they don't have a lot up front pretty much at all. And so I feel like they're going to draft a center and then they're going to tackle the wing in free agency.
James Hagens, Michael Misa, Porter Martone might be a couple guys that with 30-goal potential. All eyes on the draft lottery in Boston. Ty, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for popping on.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
There you go. He was Ty Anderson from 98.5 The Sports Hub. You can find him on Twitter at _Ty Anderson. Frank, let me hit you with that Ask DFO question again. If the Rangers miss, do you think there's more major roster surgery coming?
I don't think whatever happens the rest of this way has any bearing. There's going to be more major surgery for the Rangers regardless. They don't tolerate seasons like this. They think they have a better core than what we've seen. And the big thing for the Rangers to finally answer once and for all is how can they defend better in front of Igor Shesterkin? Because that's what's missing.
Yeah. Moving along, daily bets for Bet365. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner, every face-off hat-trick power play and shot on goal, and every suspenseful moment in between is amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app. Use the code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. A couple of plays for you tonight. The Hurricanes plus 130 to cover the puck line against the Detroit Red Wings. The Canes have won 3 in a row. They've covered in every game, but it goes deeper than that. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They've covered in all 8 of those wins. They are absolutely nailing the puck line. We're getting them at plus 130 against a Detroit team that really doesn't have a lot to play for anymore. So give me the Canes at plus 130 in Detroit tonight. And yes, the game everyone will be watching, Ovi. He's plus 325 to tie the record tonight, 14-1 to go hat trick or better and set the record on home ice against the Caps. Frank, I've put $10 on worse things than 14-1 in an OV hat trick.
Yeah, it depends on so 3 or more 1,400. if you toggled this, and I think I was looking at this on Bet365 earlier today, if you pick the team in which he'll break the record against, I think the odds are actually better for that than they are for the hat trick, if I'm not mistaken.
To break actually, you are bang on with that. It is. We just found a little edge, Frank. That's why we do this. Yes. They are 16-1 if you go on Bet365 to, or he's 16-1 to break the record against the Blackhawks tonight. So that's your edge. That's your spot if you want to get in on it.
Yeah, and look, I think the play, regardless, is OV anytime goal scorer. I think he hammers that. I think he gets at least one tonight. Everyone's juiced up. His former teammates are in town. We're expecting 99 Wayne Gretzky to be in the building tonight. We know the commissioner was there last game in Raleigh. It's go time. And I have a feeling that before we speak again on Monday's show, that this record will have fallen.
I love that. I love that. Let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. Frank, you had a chance to sit down with Luke Schenn and talk about what a whirlwind 48 hours the trade deadline was for him. Let's take a sneak peek.
When you put on your gear and you're going out to play, you mentioned the physical style that you bring, and obviously you're a guy that's not afraid to mix it up. You're not afraid to fight. How do you flip the switch? How do you, where does your meanness come from?
You know what? Because it doesn't, not every game, like some games, you might have a history with a guy or with a team and it just happens. And some games, I think, literally if it's not going, the right way in the first few shifts or the first half of the first period, I'll sit there in a TV timeout and literally talk myself into it. You gotta get going here. You gotta move your feet. You gotta get physical. And then at the end of the day, I think you want to be known as a guy that shows up for your teammates. And at the end of the day, when you're playing against a team that guy was hard to play against. So, and just for myself personally, I don't want to leave a game ever thinking I took the night off. That would be I would have, it's harder to look yourself in the mirror after thinking that you didn't do your job than then it's harder to actually talk yourself into it and going out there and just competing and laying it all on the line. I think it's harder to sit with that reflection of knowing that you didn't bring it for the next 2 days until your next game.
Frank, it was an interesting 48 hours, and now he's bringing that style of play to the Jets.
Yeah, this was one of the favorite conversations that I've had on Frankly Speaking to this point. Incredibly revealing on so many different fronts, from the mindset, which you just heard about, to the trade, the impact on his family. I think a lot of people gloss over how difficult it is to leave your wife and kids for months at a time. Everyone just thinks, oh, these guys are millionaires. They're highly paid athletes. They're living the life, that it's all easy, sunshine and rainbows, and it's not. And I can tell you that this trade took a lot out of him, but also his journey, the addition of Adam Oates to his repertoire, how it changed his career and put him back on track. I mean, this guy's career was over 300 games ago. He was in the minors, on waivers multiple times, traded multiple times, and recently crossed 1,000 games. And by the way, we could see an all Schenn first round matchup between St. Louis and Winnipeg, which would be something.
Wouldn't that be something? Yeah. Find Frankly Speaking wherever you get your podcasts from. Hockey fans, appreciate everyone in the YouTube tuning in. Could be a record-setting weekend this weekend in the NHL, and we'll be right back here on Monday to break it all down at noon Eastern. See you then. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Seravalli, to analysis from former NHLers, to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.